Hey everyone, I have some really cool news for you, coming out of Japan's Biomedical Research Institute at the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology. Researchers here have been able to genetically modify the germ cells in cockerel embryos, or rooster embryos, to make them produce a human antiviral protein called interferon beta. This procedure is kinda wild. So you have this human gene for this human protein, interferon beta, which is a really valuable protein that's used to treat hepatitis and various cancers like leukemia, kidney cancer, and melanoma. The researchers were able to isolate this human gene, and then they isolated germ cells from a rooster embryo and implanted the human genes in the rooster's germ cells. The germ cells were then reimplanted back into the embryo, and the embryo was allowed to develop normally into a mature male chicken. These modified roosters would then mate with wild hens, and impregnated them with their genetically altered sperm. This union would create offspring, little chicks, with the altered genome. The exciting part is that the female offspring, these hens who are the daughters of the altered roosters, will lay eggs that are packed with interferon beta proteins. If you want to get a sense of the medical and financial value here, listen to this. Each egg contained around 30 to 60 milligrams of interferon beta proteins, which is a huge amount. The eggs produce an extremely concentrated amount of interferon beta. I mean, if we were to just stop here, this would be an incredible achievement already on its own, like right now. But then you gotta consider that through conventional methods, it costs almost $1,000 to produce a few micrograms of interferon beta. Thousands of dollars for micrograms. That's almost nothing. This medical compound is so valuable that each egg, which can produce between 30 to 60 milligrams of interferon beta, each egg is valued between 60 million and 300 million yen, depending on the amount of interferon beta that it has. If you convert the yen into dollars, you're talking about chickens that lay eggs that are each worth $500,000 to $2.5 million. I'll say this again because it's freaking incredible. This genetic procedure has created hens that can lay eggs worth millions of dollars. Each individual egg is worth millions of dollars. Now, if you can't tell that I'm just completely blown away and incredibly impressed by this, I am. I mean, beyond just the financial aspect of it, beyond creating this incredibly valuable biological product, the medical value here is indescribable. The amount of lives that will be saved, the amount of lives that will be improved, this is what modern medicine is all about. It's stuff like this that changes the world. Okay, well, without rambling too much, currently, the researchers have about 20 genetically modified hens that are laying these eggs that are just packed with interferon beta. And they lay the eggs pretty much on the daily, just like regular hens. To quote a representative of a commercial group that's working with the researchers, the hens, quote, produce the eggs constantly, just like normal hens. These hens can produce eggs constantly, so we can obtain recombinant proteins in large amounts and with stability. In addition, this system doesn't involve killing hens, unquote. So there you have it. This is incredibly cool stuff. By implanting a human gene into another animal, we can get that animal to harmlessly produce it for us, in a way that's ethical. We don't slaughter these chickens. Instead, we value them. We value them very highly, and we protect them, and try to make them as healthy and happy as possible so they produce the healthiest eggs with the most interferon beta. I think there's some really important lessons here. Most obviously, we can genetically modify animals in a harmless and ethical way, so as to get them to cleanly produce the chemicals that we want. It's safe, it's stable, it's reliable, and it's sustainable. But more than this, there's a lesson here about the inherent value of biodiversity. There's a huge variety of animals and plants and funguses that produce an even larger variety of useful biochemicals. We can use these natural resources for our own purposes, from medicines to foods to polymers. It then becomes obvious that it's in our best interest to preserve as much life as possible, to preserve and protect as much biodiversity as possible, so that as we study the life around us, we can discover more of these useful proteins and assorted chemicals and put them to good use. We can identify these useful substances, isolate them, and then transplant the genes into a species that can produce it in biologically industrial quantities, like we do, for example, with fungal genes that get transplanted into E. coli, and just like these researchers are doing now with human genes being transplanted into chickens. Now, in a very similar vein of thought, we can also use technologies like this to extract muscle cells from living cattle and grow that muscle into larger tissue masses in a lab. This is how they propose to create artificial meat, which is an ethical breakthrough in the sense that you don't have to house or slaughter any animals. You could quite literally own a cow as a pet and keep it as healthy and as happy as possible while regularly extracting its muscle cells to grow its meat in a lab. You could literally be eating a cheeseburger made out of the flesh of your pet cow, at the same time that your pet cow sits beside you, happy and healthy and whole. It could theoretically feed you for not just its entire lifetime, but for as long as you retain some of its muscle cells to grow more meat. This also has the added bonus of not requiring antibiotics and medicines because you're not keeping the cattle housed in cramped slaughterhouse conditions with blood and feces all over the ground. Okay, so I kinda ran off on a tangent here, but the point remains. This technology is incredible because it allows us to cleanly, sustainably, and ethically farm animals for medicine. It promotes the preservation of biodiversity, and it promotes ethical ways to interact with animals, while still using them to produce stuff that we want, like medicine in this case, or in the case of cattle, lab-grown meats for food. I firmly believe that the future will be what we make of it, and stuff like this makes me think that the future will be pretty sweet indeed.